The bright lights of Archive Station hummed quietly as Zextal moved his four thin arms across the floating screens. The blue alien had been working for 16 hours straight, but he did not mind. As a senior galactic archivist, he loved his job of organizing information about all known planets. "Computer, show me Earth's natural disaster records again," he said, his large eyes blinking slowly. The computer displayed a nearly empty file. Zextal frowned. This made no sense. Every planet with life had a long history of natural disasters. Big storms, floods, earthquakes, and volcanoes. These events shaped how life evolved, but Earth's file showed almost nothing. He checked again. Maybe there was a mistake. Earth was a water planet with active plate movement and a molten core. It should have thousands of major disaster records over its long history. Computer, compare Earth's disaster record with similar planets. The screen filled with charts. Mars 1 to 46 major events. Venus 3,192 events. Proxima Centauri B 2,774 events. Earth 17 events. 17. That couldn't be right. Zextal's communicator buzzed. It was his boss, Archive Director Volu. "Still working, Zextal? The disaster prevention report is due tomorrow." "Director, I found something strange. Earth's disaster record is almost empty." Volu's gray face showed surprise. "That's impossible. Check your data sources." "I have. 3 times. Either our records are wrong or something very unusual is happening on Earth." Volu was quiet for a moment. "This could be important. The Galactic Senate needs accurate information for the disaster prevention program. I'll assign you a human partner to help investigate." The next morning, Zextal waited nervously in the station's arrival area. He had never worked closely with a human before. The sliding doors opened, and a woman with dark skin and curly black hair walked in. She wore the blue uniform of the Earth Space Agency. "Archivist Zextal? I'm Samantha Williams, xenogeologist from Earth Station 5. She held out her hand. Zextal carefully shook it, remembering human greeting customs. "Thank you for coming so quickly. When I heard about the data anomaly, I couldn't wait. This makes no sense to me. Earth has a rich disaster history." She pulled out a small device. "I brought some files from our own archives." They walked to Zextal's work area. The station curved around them, a giant ring filled with the knowledge of thousands of worlds. "Here's what I don't understand," Samantha said as they looked at the screens. "We have detailed records of major disasters. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius that buried Pompeii, the Yellow River floods that killed millions, the Indian Ocean tsunami of 2004. Our history is full of these events. Yet the geological record shows almost nothing," Zextal said. "It's as if the evidence disappears over time." Samantha loaded her files. Images of disasters appeared. Cities underwater, mountains, exploding, ground splitting open. "These are from our human records," she explained. "But your geological scans should show evidence of these events going back millions of years." Zextal nodded. "But they don't. Either your planet is unique in the galaxy, or something is erasing the evidence." Director Volu joined them, his long robes sweeping the floor. "The Senate committee is very interested in your findings. They've approved a research mission to Earth to collect fresh samples." Samantha looked excited. "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow," Volu said. "You'll have access to our best equipment." Later, as Zextal packed his research tools, Samantha asked, "Have you ever been to Earth before?" "No," he admitted. "I've studied it for years but never visited." "You'll like it," she said. "It's beautiful. Different from most worlds." She paused. "What do you think we'll find?" "I don't know. But in my 120 years as an archivist, I've learned that when data doesn't make sense, we're usually about to discover something important." The next day, they boarded the research ship Stellar Explorer. It was small but fast, with advanced labs for their work. As they prepared for the jump to light speed, Samantha showed Zextal pictures of their first destination. "This is Pompeii. In the year 79, A volcano called Mount Vesuvius erupted and buried the entire city in ash. People were frozen in place, covered instantly. Zextal studied the images. And this happened almost 2,000 Earth years ago. We should still see clear evidence in the soil layers. Exactly. It's one of the best preserved disaster sites on Earth. The ship's captain, a tall woman named Linda Clark, joined them. We're ready for jump, you should strap in. As they secured themselves, Zextal felt excitement building. In all his years of organizing information, he had never faced such a strange puzzle. The ship jumped, stars stretching into lines around them. 3 days later, they entered Earth orbit. Zextal pressed his face to the window, taking in the blue-green planet below. It's more beautiful than the pictures, he whispered. Wait until you see it up close, Samantha said. Their shuttle landed near Naples, Italy. As they stepped out, Zextal felt the warm sun on his skin. He smelled the salt air and heard birds calling. Earth was alive in a way that most planets weren't. They met their local team member, a geophysicist named Alan Rodriguez. He had brought equipment and transportation. The site is ready for your inspection, Alan said as they drove toward the ancient ruins. Though I still don't understand what you're looking for. Pompeii is the most famous volcanic disaster site on Earth. That's just it, Zextal explained. According to your human records, yes, but according to our geological scans, the evidence is much weaker than it should be. When they arrived at Pompeii, Zextal was immediately struck by the preserved ruins. They walked through ancient streets, past buildings frozen in time. These were covered in ash and pumice for nearly 1,700 years before being discovered, Samantha explained. Zextal set up his advanced scanning equipment. This will analyze the soil layers and volcanic deposits at the atomic level. As data began flowing in, his expression changed from interest to confusion. This is not right, he said. The volcanic ash has been altered somehow. Its composition is wrong. Alan looked over his shoulder. Wrong how? It's as if something has been slowly changing it at the molecular level, breaking it down and reforming it. Zextal looked up at the looming shape of Mount Vesuvius in the distance. Your records say this volcano produced enough ash and gas to darken skies across the region for days? Yes, Samantha confirmed. It was catastrophic. Then where did it all go? Zextal asked. The molecular traces should still be detectable for tens of thousands of years, but they're fading far too quickly. As the sun began to set over the ancient ruins, the three researchers looked at each other with growing wonder. We need more samples, Zextal said, from other disaster sites around your world. Something strange was happening on planet Earth, and they were just beginning to uncover it. The next morning, Zextal, Samantha, and Alan met in their temporary lab. Maps and data screens covered the walls. Samples of volcanic ash from Pompeii sat in clear containers on the tables. We need to check more disaster sites, Zextal said. One location isn't enough to prove something strange is happening. Samantha pointed to a map. I suggest we go to Yellowstone next. It's one of the largest supervolcanoes on Earth. Its last major eruption was over 630,000 years ago. Perfect, Zextal agreed. If something is changing geological evidence, we should see it clearly there. Alan looked worried. Yellowstone is a protected area. We'll need special permission. I'll handle it, Samantha said. The Earth Space Agency can get us access. 2 days later, they stepped out of a small aircraft onto the grassy plains of Yellowstone National Park. Steam rose from hot springs nearby, and in the distance a geyser shot water into the air. This whole area sits on top of a massive magma chamber, Alan explained. When it last erupted, it covered much of North America in ash. Zextal set up his equipment. His blue fingers moved quickly, adjusting settings. This scanner will show us what's under the surface, he explained. As data began flowing in, Dr. Catherine Nelson arrived. She was a climate expert who had joined their team. With short gray hair and quick movements, she immediately began studying their findings. The ash layers are definitely unusual, she agreed after examining the data. According to our models, there should be much thicker deposits, and the chemical composition is wrong. They spent 3 days collecting samples and scanning the area. Each night they gathered in their field lab to share findings. Look at this, Catherine said on the third evening. I compared soil samples from different depths. The deeper we go, the more the volcanic materials have been changed. She showed them microscope images. It's like something is slowly breaking down the ash and turning it into regular soil. But this process should take millions of years, not thousands. The same thing we saw at Pompeii, Samantha said, but happening over a much longer timescale. Zextal studied the images. In all my years studying other worlds, I've never seen anything like this. Something unique is happening on Earth. The next day, they traveled to their third site, the coast of Japan, where a massive tsunami had hit in 2011. Tsunamis leave very specific marks on coastlines, Alan explained as they walked along the beach. Sand deposits, erosion patterns. They should be visible for centuries. But again, their scans showed the evidence was fading much faster than it should. By the end of the week, they had visited 5 disaster sites around the world. At each one, they found the same pattern. The Earth was somehow erasing evidence of disasters, healing itself in ways that science couldn't explain. Back at their main lab in Tokyo, the team gathered to discuss their findings. The room was tense with excitement and confusion. Could it be some kind of microbe? Alan suggested. Some bacteria or fungus that breaks down certain materials? Catherine shook her head. Not at this scale, and not so consistently across different environments. What about human activity? Samantha asked. Could our development somehow be erasing these traces? Unlikely, Zextal said. This is happening in remote areas too, and deep underground where humans haven't disturbed the soil. As they debated, a message arrived from Galactic Archives, headquarters. Director Volu's face appeared on the screen. Your findings are causing quite a stir here, he said. The Science Council wants daily updates. Have you ruled out data error? Completely, Zextal confirmed. We've verified everything, with multiple methods. Something is actively changing Earth's geological record. After the call ended, a lab assistant entered with new test results. Dr. Rodriguez, those core samples from Antarctica arrived. You were right. They show the same pattern. Alan looked up sharply. But that's impossible. Those samples are from ice that formed over 100,000 years ago, far from any human influence. The team gathered around the new data. The Antarctic ice cores should have shown clear evidence of ancient volcanic winters, times when ash in the atmosphere cooled the planet. But the chemical signatures were much weaker than expected. It's happening everywhere, Catherine whispered. The whole planet is somehow cleaning up after disasters. That evening, as Samantha and Zextal were reviewing data, they received a surprising visitor. A tall man in an expensive suit walked into their lab. His badge identified him as John Freeman, director of the Global Geological Survey. I understand you're conducting research on disaster sites, he said coldly. I need to know why you didn't request permission from my department. Samantha stood up. We have clearance from the Earth Space Agency and international science authorities. That's why? Not enough, Freeman insisted. You're spreading concerning theories about Earth's geological record being manipulated. This could cause panic. We're not spreading anything, Zextal said calmly. We're conducting scientific research. Freeman's eyes narrowed. I want all your data turned over to my department. This investigation is now under our control. That's not going to happen, Samantha said firmly. This is an international collaboration with the Galactic Archives. After Freeman left, making thinly veiled threats about shutting down their project, Samantha looked worried. Why is he so interested in stopping us? She wondered. Perhaps some people don't want this discovery made public, Zextal suggested. The next morning, they found their lab had been broken into. Nothing was stolen, but their computer systems showed signs of attempted access. Someone tried to copy our data, Alan said. We need to secure everything, Catherine suggested, and perhaps move to a less obvious location. Samantha made some calls. I have a friend who runs a research station in the Canadian Rockies. We can continue our work there, away from prying eyes. 2 days later, they arrived at the remote mountain facility. As they set up their equipment again, Zex et al. Noticed something in their newest samples that he had missed before. "Look at this," he called to the others. Under extreme magnification, the altered volcanic ash showed tiny structures that weren't natural. They were too regular, too precise. "Those look almost engineered," Catherine whispered. "Like microscopic." "Machines?" Alan agreed, his voice filled with wonder. Samantha looked at Zextal. "What does this mean?" The alien archivist's large eyes blinked slowly. "It means we may have discovered why Earth is different from every other planet in the galaxy. Something is actively healing your world from disasters, and it's been doing it for millions of years." The snow fell gently outside the windows of the mountain research station. Inside, the team worked day and night to understand their discovery. They had found tiny machine-like structures in disaster sites around the world. "They're in every sample," Alan said, looking up from his microscope. "And they're all similar but not exactly the same." Catherine was running tests on the structures. They seemed to be made of normal Earth materials, minerals, carbon compounds, nothing alien or artificial. "But they're clearly designed," Samantha argued. "Look at the patterns, the symmetry." Zextal had been quiet for hours, searching through the Galactic Archives database. Finally, he spoke. "There are legends in the archives," he said slowly. "Very old stories about planets that were thought to be alive in some way, but they were dismissed as myths." "You mean like the Gaia theory?" Samantha asked. "Some scientists on Earth have suggested our planet functions like a single organism." "Similar," Zextal nodded. "But no confirmed case has ever been documented." As they discussed this, a security alert sounded. Someone was approaching the remote station. Alan checked the cameras. "It's a single person, an older woman. She's walking up the road in the snow." "In this weather?" Catherine looked concerned. "That's dangerous. We should help her." They brought the woman inside. She was tall with silver hair, wrapped in a thick coat. Despite her age, her eyes were sharp and alert. "My name is Elizabeth Grant," she said, warming her hands by the heater. "I've come a long way to find you." "How did you know we were here?" Samantha asked suspiciously. Elizabeth smiled. "I have friends who watch for certain kinds of research. When you started investigating disaster sites, they noticed." "What do you want?" Alan demanded. "To help you," Elizabeth said simply. "My family has been tracking Earth's unusual behavior for generations. We call ourselves the caretakers." The team exchanged glances. Zextal stepped forward. "What do you know about these?" He showed her an image of the microscopic structures. Elizabeth didn't seem surprised. "We call them mediators. They appear after disasters and help repair damage. They're part of Earth's immune system." "Immune system?" Catherine repeated. "You're saying Earth is alive?" "In a way you might not recognize as life," Elizabeth explained. "Not conscious like you or me, but aware on a different level. Responsive." Alan shook his head. "That's impossible. A planet can't be alive." "Why not?" Elizabeth challenged. "Life takes many forms. Some operate on timescales of seconds, others on timescales of millions of years." She opened a tablet and showed them images. Strange patterns in recovery zones after forest fires, unusual mineral formations after earthquakes, accelerated healing of radiation-damaged areas. "My great-grandmother started documenting these phenomena after the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. We've been collecting evidence ever since." Samantha looked skeptical. "If what you're saying is true, why hasn't science discovered this before?" "Because we're looking at the wrong timescale," Elizabeth said. "Humans live for decades. We rarely notice patterns that take centuries to complete, and we've only had the technology to see these mediators for a short time." Zextal was fascinated. "In the galaxy, we've discovered many forms of life, but never an entire planet that developed self-preservation systems." For hours, they compared Elizabeth's data with their own findings. The similarities were striking. This explains why the galactic archives show almost no disaster evidence for Earth, Catherine realized. If these mediators have been active for millions of years, they would have erased most traces. But why would the planet develop such a system? Alan asked, still struggling with the concept. Elizabeth looked out at the snowy mountains. Earth has suffered 5 mass extinction events in its history. Perhaps these mediators evolved as a response, a way to prevent a 6th. Or, Zextal suggested, they co-evolved with life itself. A partnership. Life helps the planet, and the planet helps life survive. As night fell, they continued debating. Alan remained skeptical, demanding more proof. Catherine was fascinated by the scientific implications. Samantha kept thinking about ancient human myths about Mother Earth. Suddenly all their devices began beeping with alerts. What's happening? Samantha checked her computer. Seismic activity, Alan reported, his face pale. Major movement under Yellowstone. The supervolcano is showing signs of waking up. They gathered around the monitors. Data was streaming in from monitoring stations around Yellowstone. This is bad, Catherine whispered. If Yellowstone erupts fully, it could trigger a volcanic winter across the northern hemisphere. We need to get there, Zextal said. If these mediators exist, we might see them in action during an actual disaster. That's extremely dangerous, Alan protested. An eruption would kill anyone nearby. We don't have a choice, Samantha argued. This could be our only chance to witness the process. Elizabeth was already putting her coat back on. I know a place. An old monitoring station inside the park. It's close enough to observe but has underground shelters if things get bad. As they packed essential equipment, Zextal sent a message to the Galactic Archives, updating them on their findings and the developing situation at Yellowstone. Director Volu responded immediately. This could be the scientific discovery of the century. But don't risk your lives unnecessarily. By morning, they were aboard a small aircraft, flying toward Yellowstone. Below them, they could see emergency vehicles on the roads. Evacuation orders had been issued for communities near the park. The government is taking this seriously, Catherine noted. They've never evacuated for Yellowstone activity before. When they landed at a small airstrip, a government vehicle was waiting. A stern-looking man stepped out. I'm William Parker, Department of Interior, he said. This area is being evacuated. You need to turn around. Elizabeth stepped forward. We have authorization to access the old USGS monitoring station. She showed him some papers. Parker looked at them suspiciously. Those aren't valid anymore. The station was decommissioned years ago. Please, Samantha said. We're scientists studying geological anomalies. This eruption could provide valuable data. After a tense discussion, Elizabeth made a phone call. Whoever she spoke to seemed to have influence, because Parker reluctantly agreed to let them proceed. But, you're on your own, he warned. If this thing blows, no one's coming to rescue you. As they drove toward the heart of Yellowstone, they could feel the ground trembling beneath them. Steam vents were erupting with greater force than normal. Wildlife was fleeing in large numbers. The signs aren't good, Alan said quietly. All indicators point to a major event. At the old monitoring station, they quickly set up their equipment. Through their instruments, they could detect the massive pressure building beneath the Earth's crust. Look at this, Zextal pointed to readings on his scanner. There's unusual activity at the molecular level around the magma chamber. The mediators, they're already gathering. Elizabeth nodded grimly. They know what's coming. But this might be too big, even for them. The ground shook violently beneath them as if the planet itself was struggling with some invisible force. I think it's starting, Catherine whispered. The ground shook harder. Equipment fell from tables. Outside, birds filled the sky, fleeing the area. We should get to the underground shelter, Alan said, grabbing essential instruments. They hurried down concrete stairs into a bunker beneath the monitoring station. The room was dusty but solid, with thick walls designed to withstand extreme conditions. Set up the equipment here, Samantha directed. We can still collect data through the sensors outside. Zextal worked quickly, his 4 hands connecting devices to power sources. I'm linking to the Galactic Archives satellite. It will record everything, even if we don't survive. No one spoke for a moment, the reality of their danger sinking in. Catherine broke the silence. The seismic activity is still increasing. Pressure in the magma chamber is approaching critical levels. On their screens, they watched as the Earth's crust bulged upward in the Yellowstone caldera. Hot springs turned into geysers. Geysers became steam explosions. It's definitely going to erupt, Alan said grimly. All signs point to a major event. Elizabeth was studying Zexital's scanner. Readings. The mediators are gathering in huge numbers. I've never seen a concentration this high. What exactly are they doing? Samantha asked. They appear to be positioning themselves along fault lines and weak points in the crust, Zexital explained. Almost like they're preparing for something. The bunker shook violently. Dust fell from the ceiling. That was a magnitude 7 earthquake, Catherine reported, checking her instruments. The main event is starting. On their video feed, they watched in horror as the first explosion occurred. A massive section of the park's surface blew upward, sending rock and ash thousands of feet into the air. The camera shook, then went dark. We've lost outside visuals, Alan said, typing frantically. Switching to satellite feed. The new image showed a terrifying scene from above. A huge cloud of ash was rising into the atmosphere. The eruption was beginning. This is it, Elizabeth whispered. A supervolcano eruption. This could change the climate of the entire planet. In the bunker, the air grew hot. The walls creaked under stress. Everyone was silent, watching their instruments, waiting to see if their shelter would hold. Look at this, Zexital suddenly said, pointing to his scanner. The mediators are doing something to the ash particles. On the microscopic level, the tiny machines were attaching themselves to ash particles. They seemed to be changing the ash's structure. They're binding the toxic elements, Catherine realized, checking chemical readings, making them inert. And look at the electromagnetic readings, Samantha added. There's a massive field forming around the eruption zone. The bunker shook again as another explosion rocked the area. Everyone held on to something to stay upright. This shouldn't be possible, Alan said, staring at his screen. The eruption energy is being channeled somehow. It's not spreading outward as it should. Elizabeth nodded. The mediators are working together, creating a system to contain the disaster. For hours, they watched in amazement as the impossible happened before their eyes. Instead of spreading across the continent, much of the ash was being transformed. The toxic gases were being neutralized. The heat was being dispersed in controlled ways. It's like watching an immune response in action, Catherine said, but on a planetary scale. Zexital was recording everything. The Galactic Science Council will never believe this without evidence. We're witnessing something unprecedented. Eventually, the shaking stopped. The bunker grew quiet. On their satellite feed, they could see that the eruption was already losing strength, far sooner than any volcanic model would predict. It's working, Elizabeth said with quiet wonder. Earth is controlling the eruption. But how? Alan asked. These mediators are just tiny machines. The forces involved in a supervolcano are beyond enormous. It's not just the mediators, Samantha said slowly, looking at combined data from all their instruments. They're like white blood cells in a body, but the real power is coming from deeper inside the planet. She pointed to readings from deep scanning equipment. There's energy flowing from the core, through the mantle. The mediators are just tools, being used by something much larger. Zexital's large eyes blinked rapidly as he processed this idea. You're suggesting the entire planet is coordinating this response? Yes, Samantha said. Earth itself is alive in some way we don't fully understand, and it's been this way for billions of years. As day turned to night, they continued monitoring the situation. Reports came in from around the world. The Yellowstone eruption, which should have been catastrophic, was already being described as contained and unusual by scientists. No one will understand what really happened, Elizabeth said. They'll call it a scientific anomaly, invent theories about unusual magma composition, or atmospheric conditions. Unless we tell them the truth, Catherine said. The next morning, they cautiously emerged from the bunker. The air was hazy but breathable. The landscape had changed dramatically. New hills had formed. Trees were flattened for miles. But the destruction was far less than it should have been. We need to collect samples immediately, Zextal said. The mediators will already be working to erase evidence of what happened. They spread out, gathering materials from the eruption zone. Each sample showed the same thing: microscopic machines actively transforming the volcanic byproducts. They're converting the ash into beneficial soil compounds, Alan said, his skepticism finally giving way to wonder. In 100 years, this area will be more fertile than before. As they worked, government helicopters appeared overhead. Soon, officials in protective gear approached them. "This area is restricted," one called through a megaphone. "You need to evacuate immediately." William Parker was with them, looking angry. "I warned you not to come here. You're all under detention pending investigation." Before they could be separated, Zextal secretly transferred all their data to the Galactic Archives satellite. "Whatever happens," he whispered to Samantha, "the truth is safe now." As they were escorted to waiting helicopters, they looked back at the changed landscape. To ordinary eyes, it was just the aftermath of a natural disaster. But they knew better. They had witnessed Earth defending itself. And soon, the galaxy would know too. For 3 days, the team was kept in separate rooms at a government facility. They were questioned again and again about what they had been doing at Yellowstone during the eruption. "We were conducting scientific research," Samantha repeated to her interrogators. Nothing more. On the 4th day, they were finally brought together in a conference room. William Parker entered with several officials in suits. "You're being released," he said stiffly. "But all your equipment and samples are confiscated. You're forbidden from publishing anything about what you saw at Yellowstone." "On what grounds?" Catherine demanded. "National security," Parker replied. "The official story is that Yellowstone experienced a minor eruption that was naturally contained. There will be no mention of unusual phenomena." After signing numerous papers, they were driven to the nearest city and left at a hotel. As soon as they were alone, Zextal smiled. "They didn't know about the Galactic Archives upload," he said, quietly. "All our data is safe." That night, they gathered in Samantha's room to plan their next steps. "The question is, what exactly did we witness?" Alan asked. "We need to analyze the data properly. And we need more samples," Catherine added. "Fresh ones before the mediators break down." Elizabeth looked thoughtful. "I have friends who can get us back into Yellowstone, away from the guarded areas. But first, we need to understand what we're really dealing with," Samantha said. She turned to Zextal. "Can you access the archives from here?" Zextal nodded and pulled out a small device. "This connects directly to our satellite network." He worked for a while, then projected images onto the wall. "I've been searching for any similar phenomena across known worlds. There are a few cases, with partial similarities, but nothing exactly like Earth." "What about those myths you mentioned?" Elizabeth asked. "About living planets?" Zextal found ancient texts in the database. "There are stories from the earliest spacefaring civilizations. They spoke of rare planets that seemed aware, that responded to threats, but they were dismissed as primitive superstitions." "Maybe they weren't superstitions after all," Samantha said. 2 days later, they had secured new equipment and returned to Yellowstone through hidden trails Elizabeth knew. The area was transformed. New hills had formed. Lakes had changed shape. Steam rose from fresh cracks in the ground. "Look at these readings," Catherine said excitedly. "The mediators are everywhere, in higher concentrations than before the eruption." They collected dozens of samples and set up hidden monitoring stations. For the next week, they watched as the Earth literally healed itself. The toxic ash was converted into fertile soil. Harmful gases were broken down into harmless components. Even radiation levels were reduced. "It's like watching a wound heal," Alan said, his scientific skepticism finally completely gone. But on a planetary scale, back at their new lab, hidden, in a small town far from government eyes, they analyzed everything: Sextol worked day and night comparing their findings with the entire Galactic Archives database. "I've confirmed it," he announced finally. "The mediators aren't technology as we understand it. They're part of Earth itself, evolved over billions of years." "Evolved?" Samantha asked. "You mean like living organisms?" "Not exactly," Sextol explained. "They're more like specialized cells in a body. And Earth is the body." Elizabeth nodded slowly. "Ancient human cultures often viewed Earth as alive, as a mother or goddess. Perhaps they sensed something science couldn't measure." But how did this begin, Catherine wondered. Other planets don't have these systems. After more research and debate, they developed a theory. Earth's unique position, composition, and history had created special conditions. The first simple forms of these mediators had emerged alongside the earliest life forms, perhaps 4 billion years ago. As life evolved, so did the planet's self-repair system, in a kind of partnership. "Life protects the planet and the planet protects life," Samantha summed up. "A cooperation that's lasted billions of years." Finally, they were ready to share their discovery with the world. Despite government warnings, they prepared a comprehensive report with all their evidence. Sextol sent it to the Galactic Science Council. Samantha prepared versions for Earth's scientific community. The night before they planned to release their findings, a visitor arrived at their lab. It was Director Volu from the Galactic Archives, who had traveled to Earth personally. "Your discovery has caused quite a sensation," Volu told them. "The Council has reviewed your evidence. They've confirmed your findings." "And?" Sextol asked anxiously. "Earth is being reclassified," Volu announced solemnly. "It's now designated as the first confirmed living planet in the galaxy." The implications were enormous. News spread quickly, across Earth and throughout galactic society. At first, there was disbelief and resistance. Many scientists refused to accept that a planet could be alive in any meaningful sense. But as more research was conducted, the evidence became overwhelming. Earth had evolved a complex self-healing system that had been functioning for billions of years. The reason the Galactic Archives had shown no major disasters was because Earth actively erased them over time. Scientists from 100 worlds came to study this phenomenon. New fields of research emerged. The understanding of what constituted life expanded. Earth's status in the galactic community rose dramatically. One afternoon, months after their discovery, the team gathered on a hillside overlooking a valley that had been transformed by the Yellowstone eruption. Already new growth was spreading across the landscape. "I still can't believe we never noticed this before," Alan said, shaking his head. "We weren't looking properly," Catherine replied. "We saw the pieces but missed the pattern." "Just like the ancient myths about Mother Earth," Elizabeth added. "We dismissed them as primitive thinking, when they actually contained profound truth." Samantha turned to Sextol. "What happens now? Will other planets develop these systems?" The alien archivist looked up at the blue sky. "Perhaps, given enough time. But for now, Earth is unique in the galaxy, and what we learn here may help us restore damaged worlds elsewhere." As they watched the sun set over the healing landscape, they felt a new connection to the living world beneath their feet. Earth had been protecting itself, and all life upon it, for billions of years. And now, finally, its secret was known. The Galactic Archives no longer showed Earth as a planet without disasters. Instead, it was recorded as something far more special, a world that had learned to heal itself.